Hi guys. So, in my last video, I told you guys that I would be making some videos that do not correlate or have anything to do with my health, fitness, weight loss journey. Um, and I mentioned that that God had placed on me, or placed on my heart, and He's been nudging me to tell my story as far as my journey from coming out of New Age back into Christianity. So I'm going to try to tell my story without being all over the place. Okay. I'm not the greatest storyteller, but I'm going to try my best. Okay. And I have my notes. So hopefully I don't forget anything. Um, so I just want to sort of give a little backstory on my childhood, just growing up. I grew up in the church. I was a little girl, and as a little girl, I really had a heart for the Lord. I was in church just about every Sunday. Um, at this time, I lived with my mom. I had three siblings. My mom had four kids. So I remember my adopted granddad. I'm not adopted or by any means, but I'm just to give you just to kind of illustrate the fact that he's not my biological grandfather. But I grew up around him, and he was like a grandfather to me. He was the pastor of uh, our family church, and yeah, he was like everybody call him granddad. So yeah, so he would come and pick me up or pick us up like faithfully every Sunday. We lived um we lived in a different city at this time. I don't if anyone's from Virginia and you're watching this, the 757. At this time I lived in Newport News with my mom, and the church was in at this point the church was in Yorktown. So he would make his rounds in this big, like, uh I guess I'm trying to think, 10 passenger van. I'm trying to think of the vans that we have at work, and I believe that those are 10 passengers. It was a big, nice sized van, and he would come in, he would make his rounds to pick up his daughters and their children. So all the grandkids pretty much, and his kids and the grandkids. So he would make his rounds between Hampton and Newport News, and he would come and pick us up. I remember just like I looked forward to going to church. I made sure that I prayed every night to God, and every morning. Like I just was like a child loving the Lord, the way that the Bible speaks of, um, instructs us to be like children. And that was me. Like even now, I want that feeling. Like I want to be like the little girl version of me who just absolutely adored God, and I just loved God. Like no one could tell me any different. No one ever tried either, but I just loved the Lord. So that's my childhood memory of my relationship with God. And we went to church. I went to Bible study. I just grew up in the church pretty much. My mom she didn't go. I probably remember a couple of times where she went to church, but I just think that there was probably some drama. It's a family church. So I think there was just some drama, and it just kind of kept her away. Um, and I don't remember my siblings having the same hunger for going to church and having a relationship with God the way that I did. I do remember my older sister, coming to church um, more often, but it could have been all of us. I just don't remember all four of us. Uh, my memory is not the greatest, So, especially of my childhood memories, they're just not the greatest. I think that's just due to trauma, but that's another story for another day. Um, so as a teen, went to church, but of course that's when you start to like you're more exposed to worldly things, your friends, and you're influenced in a different way. So we still went to church, and then I remember during this time I lived with my aunt, and my aunt was the daughter of our granddad. So she like biologically. So my sister and I, we actually lived with my aunt. I from For me, it was from the age of um 10 because I turned 11 while I was living with her. I moved with her. My birthday is August 25th. I moved with her that summer. And so I was 10 and then going on 11. So let's just say I was 11 and I lived with her until I was, I believe, 16. So during this time, we're going to church, you know. Every now and then she would say we could stay home from church, but we were going to church, we were going to Bible study. I mean, Sunday school, morning church service. She usually never really excused us from that service, but every now and then she would allow us to stay home and not attend the evening service. So yeah, every Sunday, you're literally it's church all day. And like Bible study, um, revivals. Like we were there for it all. If if our pastor or someone from our church was preaching at another church, we were there. So we were in church. So once I moved back with my mom, at that point I was kind of happy because I'm like, I don't have to go to church anymore. So my love for the Lord just sort of changed because I was a teen. I was like, I had more worldly influence. And even though I grew up in the church and I knew better, it was still like, I didn't have anyone who was like talking to me and giving me real guidance on the like practical guidance on the things that we struggle with as teens. You know, I didn't really have that guidance. I didn't have anyone to really look up to in that way. So it was just me being influenced by my friends. And then when I moved back with my mom, it was like I didn't really have any restrictions. So at that point, you know, I'm just drinking, like, yeah, smoking, not a whole bunch. I'm not one of those people who were like just drinking all the time and smoking all the time. No, but I was exploring and I was trying things. So I really got away from the Lord at that point. Uh, Fast forward. Oh, so that's just a background on my childhood. I do remember, um, as a child, my mom talking about things like zodiac signs and astrology. Not a whole bunch to the point where it was like I was hearing it constantly, but I do remember like her talking about it. I remember her saying what our zodiac signs were and things like that. So that was probably like the first glimpse into um, witchcraft that I was exposed to. So growing up, I never thought that was a bad thing. I knew about them. I didn't really research them much. So as a young adult, um, I went to church every now and then, but I was not going to church because I didn't have to. No one was making me. So I didn't. I moved to New York for a relationship, and I do remember um the person I was with at the time kind of saying like he didn't really have any foundational beliefs. And at that point, like I knew that I believed in God, but I just knew like I'm not necessarily living a life that is surrendered to God, like that's surrendered to the Lord. So um it was like, okay. And I also knew about being unequally yoked. I knew about all of that, but I was just like, okay, you know, I'm figuring life out too. So during that time, my time in New York, I visited a psychic for the first time. So I'll discuss what prompted me to visit the psychic. And um and yeah, this was my first time ever being exposed to any type of, I guess this was like, to anything related to like super spiritual, like, but the opposite, like new agey stuff. So I went to a psychic because during this time I was trying to remember who molested me when I was a little girl. I was molested, and I still to this day I cannot remember who it was. And like I remember what happened, but I don't remember a lot of the before, and I don't remember a lot of the after. It's just, and this is probably what this, in addition to other things, is probably what caused me to block out a lot of my childhood. So I went to the psychic and I really wanted to know like who molested me. And the psychic, I don't need to talk about what they said, but they said whatever. They said some things, and it still sort of left me not like walking out, still trying to figure out, well, who was it? Um, so that was my first time ever visiting a psychic. And I remember knowing like the Bible says this is wrong, but is it? Is it? Like I learned about this in church, but I don't know. So um the next time that I spoke to someone who was like a psychic or whatever, it was also in New York, and I was at a festival with my ex, and I did a palm reading. It was just a little table where they were reading palms, and I did a palm reading, and they gave me a palm reading, and I remember them saying like, y'all are gonna have a baby, and it'll be a boy. Um, that never happened. Never got pregnant with him. Never had a baby with him. So, um, that never happened, but that was my second time exposing myself to someone who was into witchcraft. So I moved back home. I was in New York. It was Albany. I was there for about 2.5 years, and then I moved back home because the relationship ended. And at that point, that's when I was like just really living worldly, and I wasn't even thinking about God. Like, wasn't even thinking about God. I can't remember praying and all of that. So yeah. um so that's for like the first couple of years of being back home in Virginia. And then in 2015, I remember just hitting a breaking point where it's like actually praying to God and saying like, God, what I'm doing is not working. I am causing more harm to myself emotionally, physically, spiritually. Like I am just not doing good. I'm not in a good place. I was just in a space of like just doing me and trying to be free and like not care. And it just put me in a bad place. So I got into, during this time I was praying, started reading the Bible a little. This is when my husband and we started getting more serious. We started talking. This is when our relationship started in like the end of 2015. So um I started to focus more on my spiritual journey. And during this time I got into the self-love movement. So now something that I the way that I perceive self love is, I think it's important to love yourself, but I think that too much love um, causes you to be selfish, and that's what I became. I became very selfish in the sense of, if someone does me wrong, then I don't need them in my life. We don't even have to really talk about it. Like, you know better, and you offended me, so like I don't need you in my life. I don't need I don't need you. I ended one of my friendships because, and we were pretty cool and we were pretty close. We've rekindled our relationship now, but I handled it in such an immature way over something that I easily could have talked to her about, but I chose not to. And I chose to address it through text, and then I just like kind of fussed her out, and we kind of had our back and forth in the group chat and texting, and I just was like, I'm done. Like it was easy for me because I was on this self-love movement where self-love, that movement sort of, it causes you to prioritize yourself. Um and it's like, if you allow yourself to be around people who may disrespect you or do something wrong, then you're not really loving yourself. It doesn't teach you to really handle things in a responsible manner, because we all have faults. We all do things sometimes to offend others, and the we have to go about it in a mature way. We have to have conversations. We have to actually try to compromise and work with the people that we love. But yeah, I was just in a space where it's like, forget you, like I don't need you. So I feel like the whole self-love stuff, it just made me selfish. And um during this time, this is where I started to also get into the new age stuff, like really get into it. So I want to say maybe it was about 2016 at this point. I started to, I remember hearing someone at work mention 1111. Like, that's a lucky number, right? So I'm like, okay, I never heard that before. And, I looked it up and I'm like, okay, so it's like an angel number. Okay. So that sounds innocent, right? Next thing you know, I start seeing these repeating numbers. I start seeing 1111, 444, like just repeating numbers. And I would look them up to see what they meant. And I don't even remember any of that stuff now. I don't remember what I read as far as what these repeating numbers meant, specifically like 1111 and 444, 555. Like, I don't remember specifically, but I know that once she mentioned it and I got a little interested, I started to see them. I started to see them. Never saw them before, never noticed them before, nothing. I just started to see them. So I started to research it, and it just started to consume me. I started to get into like the whole, like all the metaphysical, and whatever you want to call it. And yeah, I just thought that this is so cool. So I don't know exactly how. Let me make sure I'm getting my notes. So that was numerology, right? Um, I don't know how I got into crystals. I do not remember how. It could have just been from my research of, when you are getting into new age and when you're in it, your research is like endless. It's like, seriously, it's endless. There's so much to research. It's like a rabbit hole that you can just get completely like just trapped in. So I think I was probably doing a lot of research, and then maybe I came across someone on YouTube, and I'm gonna touch on her. I came across people on YouTube maybe, and it was just a rabbit hole. So maybe that's how I learned about crystals. But I got into crystals, y'all, to the point where I was actually like attending like crystal conventions. I remember going with my friend to a crystal convention in Virginia Beach, and like we were just so excited to get these crystals. We spent a lot of money on crystals. She spent more money than me just because that's just how she is. I'm more frugal, but we spent a lot of money on crystals, and I came in knowing like, I'm looking for this crystal, I'm looking for this one, I'm looking for this one. And then while you're there, you learn about other crystals. You learn about the copper jewelry and all of these things. Like it's so much. And guys, this crystal convention, it was big. It was like this huge warehouse, and it was filled up like with vendors who were selling crystals and jewelry and all of this like very new age spiritual stuff, you know. So I went there. I remember going to a crystal shop that was in Hampton, Virginia, and I remember yeah, I'll tell that story in a second, but I remember going there. Um so from there I started to get into ancestral prayers and worship, meditation, um rituals, like I was doing rituals. I came across, well, no, there's this girl, and a lot of you may be familiar with her depending on how long you've been on YouTube and like how long you've been watching YouTube and just your reason for being on YouTube. I started out being on YouTube because I was into natural hair. So the natural hair movement, I was one of the first people like that I know who did the big chop and went natural. And yeah, I watched YouTube and I watched videos all the time on it. So one of my favorite people at this time was Taryn Guy. I don't know if any of you are familiar with her, but Taryn Guy, that's her name. She was big on natural hair. Like she just had the prettiest curls and big hair, and she like good make like she did makeup. She was just amazing. She's a really cool person, you know, from watching her on YouTube. Um, so she started to get into this. I remember her having um, a small journey to Christ. Like it was very short, where she was looking for more. She was looking for more meaning in her life, and she learned about Christianity, and she turned to that, right? And then somehow, I don't know what happened. I don't remember. She may have told the story. I don't remember. But somehow she got into New Age. So she really got into it. Like going and meeting up with people. Mind you, she already had a big name on YouTube anyway. So she had easier and more access to people. So I remember her meeting up with someone who was popular at the time. I don't know his name, but doing meditations and things like that. And then she started this Facebook page, this Facebook group called the Indigo Tribe. And I joined that group. And when I tell you, like I looked forward to it. I looked forward to what people were doing and what people were saying. I looked forward to when she would post a video and talk to us and go live and all of these things. Like it was really like it's weird now looking back on it. So this is when I learned about Reiki. I still don't fully understand what it is, but I learned about that. This is when I got into tarot cards. I wasn't doing tarot cards, but I would do tarot card readings. So I would, it was this girl who provided a service. I forgot her name, but she would do tarot card readings. And I think I probably did like 3 or 4 of them with her. And also, I followed this other guy on Instagram. I can't think of his name. I can't think of his name, but I got a psychic reading from him. Like, yeah, it was, I like completely just spiraled down. I was like really into New Age, like talking to trees, praying, doing rituals. Um, the thing about New Age is that there's no definitive direction to go in. Like it just isn't. There's the typical like love and light and all of those things and meditation, and you just seem very earthy and in touch with the earth, but and in touch spiritually, but there's really nothing, no guidance. So you can look up so much and it can take you down seriously a rabbit hole. So I remember like believing in my higher self. And guys, if you don't go through this, you don't really know about it. So please know that these are things that I actually researched and I went through and I believed. So my higher self, like just talking to my higher self, I remember staging my apartment, things like that. Like it was bad. Um, I also got into African spirituality. So at this point, again, always keeping in mind that I know right from wrong. I knew that uh, I knew what I grew up believing, but at this point, I'm questioning it. I'm like, well, maybe this isn't true. Maybe because with African spirituality, they say the sun is Jesus, but really they're talking about the literal sun. So you're sitting here praying to the sun, worshiping the sun, and it's crazy. And it's funny now because I'm like, Gigi, what were you thinking? But it's not funny because so many people are still there. So many people are just getting into it and they're like, it has them entranced. Um, Satan is the ultimate deceiver, y'all. Like he disguises himself as light. The Bible tells us this. Like the Bible warns us against how deceitful Satan is. So when all of these things seem like they're right, but you know that it goes against what God said, what Yahweh said, like then that's a red flag. It's like, okay, this goes against what God said. So this must be one of those times where Satan is like being sneaky. He's very clever. Um, so I got into African spirituality. I remember I bought the Hidden Colors documentary, which was pretty much is completely against Christianity. They didn't believe that Christianity. They felt like it was a religion that was used to enslave us, and it's pretty much the whole documentary series is defending that and trying to give you proof of like African African people and our spiritual beliefs and like where we come from. And I like when I learned about it, I was so invested and I literally invested and I was broke. I was so broke during that time. Completely just a single mom, just broke. But I really invested money in getting all of those documentaries and I did. And yeah, I was buying books. I back to the crystals. I was using yoni eggs. If you don't know what that is, look it up. But it's like a crystal and it's shaped like an egg, and you put it in, you put it inside yourself, and you wear it in hopes that like you're going to heal your chakras and all of that. Like I was really into this stuff. Like I was really, I remember the crystal shop that I went to in Hampton. And this is how like I strongly believe that God will do all that he can to protect and cover his children. And so I went to the crystal shop and I remember how this lady looked. And she was so friendly to one of the customers. She was like talking to the customer for a long time. And I'm just like, okay, I really want to talk to her. I wanted a chakra reading, right? Um, like I was walking around and I'm just waiting for her to be finished. And she seemed very pleasant. So she finally finishes up and she takes the time to talk to me. So, and I think she hugged the person before me when they were leaving. She hugged them and greeted them. She looked at me and she just had this completely serious look on her face, like just like no emotion, but like she was just like, it was like, I don't know if I'm doing it right, but just a blank, like face, kind of. And I remember her saying, because I'm thinking maybe she'll hug me too. She was very pleasant and friendly with the person before, and she hugged them by. So I'm thinking she'll do the same thing with me. She says to me, I'm very, I'm spiritually sensitive, and I can't touch people. I can't touch a lot of people because it messes me up spiritually. And I'm like, okay. I thought it was weird in the moment. And I'm like, okay. So I tell her I want a chakra reading, and she does a chakra reading. She gets her pendulum. I think that's what it's called. Is that what it's called? Let me see. Um, but it's like this little crystal arrow thingy, and she uses that. And I forgot what it's called, but anyway, she used that, and she goes to my chakras, and when she gets to my, I don't remember the chakra names, but sexuality or whatever chakra, whichever one symbolizes that, excuse me, um she stays there, and she's pretty much saying I need healing from that, and I just break down crying. Remember, I was molested, and at this point I'm still like trying to heal from that. So just know that when someone is sexually abused, it's like you don't just heal overnight. It takes a long time, and some people never heal from it. So it's and it shows up in different ways and in different areas in your life. So at this point, yeah, I know that I need healing, and I because I was into this stuff, I'm like, I like this is still getting to me, and it's like weighing me down. It's causing me to feel depressed and everything. So I break down crying. Like I remember, I think I had to hold my hands up or something, or hold my hands out while she did the chakra reading, and I break down crying, and I'm just like, I feel like, how if you're crying, but and you need to be embraced. If not, you kind of feel exposed. Like I'm just sitting here crying, breaking down, and I feel so exposed. And she just still looking at me with this blank stare, like this blank look on her face, like she hates me almost. And when I think back to that moment, like in my mind, the way that that registers to me now is God was on me. Like God had his hand on me. At that point, even though I was being completely disobedient, completely, God was still looking out for me. God was still he still covered me. For someone to be so into this spiritual movement to where they open the store and they're saying like they're sensitive to touching people and all of these things, like I believe that something in her was afraid of me, was afraid of the God that was still in me, of God still covering me and protecting me. That's what I strongly believe that. Like when I think back to that, sometimes I get goosebumps because I know how she looked at me. It was like she just automatically hated me. And she would not touch me like at all. Um So, and yeah, I felt so exposed because I'm sitting here crying, and like clearly I'm in pain. Like I have some mental, emotional stuff going on, and there's no comfort. It's just this cold look at me, like no softness at all. So yeah, so I'm into that. I get in, like I'm doing meditations. I remember doing meditations at night where I'm like talking to these false gods. Um, Oh man, just thinking back to that, it's like I was really deep into it. I was really talking to false gods and praying to false gods and talking to my ancestors. I remember doing a meditation where I was pretty much, it was like a guided meditation, and it pretty much was like, invite like someone important in your life who you may want to talk to, and invite them into the meditation and ask them the questions that you want to know, and like wait for them to give you answers. um so I remember inviting my granddad, like my biological one, who I didn't really know well. I remember inviting him, and I remember doing a meditation where I was praying for my higher self to protect me, and I prayed to these different guys. I want to say like Horus, and I don't even remember all the names, but there were it was like, I know one of them has like the human body but the dog face or something. I don't remember their names. Like I try so hard to get away from this stuff and to forget about it. Um I remember doing a meditation before I went to bed, and I invited them to stand like at the foot of my bed, and I invited like four different um gods per se to protect me at night. And when I tell y'all, like, I remember feeling like I felt like something was in my room. Like I felt like something was in my room, like a spirit, something. And I felt uneasy. Even though I prayed for this, y'all, I felt like I don't even think I slept good. I only remember doing this one night. I don't think I slept good. I remember doing a meditation, a guided meditation through the Indigo tribe, where it was like supposed to give us access to some. I forget the terminology of things, but it was supposed to give us access to some type of data and different dimensions and all of these different things. I remember being in the Indigo tribe, and Taryn Guy and other members of the Indigo tribe. This is the Facebook group, by the way, Indigo tribe. I think it was the Indigo tribe or Indigo 11 tribe. I think it was Indigo 11. So I remember them going on like this spiritual retreat, and they came back and they told us how it was for them, and they talked about how they saw a UFO in the sky. They did like what's that, Ashawega, that it's the thing that Andre 3000 did when he did his latest album with the was it the flute or something, but it was like that kind of retreat. I remember them coming back and talking about that and how they did the meditation. And yeah, I am so happy I never went on any of those retreats or anything like that, but I remember like being envious because I wanted to. I'm like, man, why I missed it? Like, why couldn't I have gone? I want to see a UFO, all of these things. So, let me make sure I'm staying on track. Uh, During this time, I was also wearing waist beads, and that's pretty much it. So I think I touched on everything that I was into. And I was into this for a couple of years. I finally got out of it in 2019. So this went on from 2016 until 2019. I will say in 2018, I slowed down. I had just gotten married. I had my daughter. We moved to Maryland. And I really just didn't have the time or space to focus on all of this. During this time, I my husband and I, this time we were dating long distance. So our dating life was long distance. We would visit each other, but it was long distance. And then our first time actually living together and seeing each other consistently every day was when got married and moved to Maryland. Hold on. Okay, sorry, I had to turn the oven off. So I'm gonna speed this up because now I have to get to work. But I yeah, I just didn't have the time. I was a new mom all over again, new wife. So I didn't really have the time or energy to really give to this. And I remember trying to get back into it, trying to read my books and stuff. Something just didn't feel right. So we bought our house in 2019, and I remember one day, I don't know what prompted me to do this, but I called my childhood pastor. At this point, my grandfather, he had passed. Um, so his wife, which is, we also call her Pastor Diane. So I called her one night, and I well, I messaged her on Facebook, and I, told her I wanted to talk to her about something. So she called me, and I asked her, "What's the difference?" I asked her about I told her about me being into new age stuff, and I asked her what's the difference between a psychic and a prophet. I said, I don't understand why it's bad for us to visit to talk to psychics and and to be into that stuff. And what she told me, I'll never forget. She said that the difference between a psychic and a prophet is who they're getting the information from, right? So a psychic, they're getting their information from Satan, from demons, and their information is very limited. But a prophet, although their information is limited, their information comes from God. It comes from God, and it's not necessarily something that they can just access. So that's the difference. And this is how, again, Satan mimics everything God does. Everything. So when you look at psychics and then you look at prophets, like psych. Okay, sorry, I had to clear up some storage in my phone. So the angel will, I mean, the angel, Satan will always disguise himself, and he will always mimic God. So when you look at the law of attraction, I just saw a post where someone tried to justify how the law of attraction is biblical, and it's like, no, it's not. It's literally Satan just trying to mimic everything that God does. It's like everything. The law of attraction is a lot of times it's about greed and selfishness. But God, you can pray to God and ask him to give you your heart's desires, but sometimes the answer is no. Sometimes God is like, I have a different plan for you. So no, I have something better. Um but after I talked to my childhood pastor, and she told me the difference, I really started to consider that. And I remember, I want to say it was that same night. I remember just being down on my knees, just praying and asking God for forgiveness, like just weeping, like uncontrollably weeping and just asking for forgiveness. And I don't think I've ever done that. Like I've cried, praying to God, like asking God, why did certain things happen to me? Why was I molested? Why were my parents not always there in my life? Like why? All of these different things. But I've never, ever just fell to my knees surrendering, ever. But that day, my life just changed, and like I knew it was wrong. I knew. I'm like, God, please forgive me. Like, and in that moment, I felt like that little girl, the little girl version of me, who just like, I just wanted to be back in God's presence. I wanted his comfort. I wanted his protection. I wanted his love. I was so vulnerable, and all I could do was cry and ask him for forgiveness. And even moving forward, like for a long time, I was just constantly, God, please forgive me. I'm so sorry that I did that. Lord, please forgive me. I was wrong, God. Please forgive me, God. Please still love me. Please keep me close as your child, God. Please just protect me. Like just constantly praying to God and asking for forgiveness, even though I know that God forgives. He probably forgave me the moment that my heart changed, the moment that I turned back to him. But there's still, just like we feel guilt and shame when it comes to things that we do against the people in our lives, I felt so much guilt and shame, and it wasn't God putting it on me, it was me just knowing that I was wrong. So right after that, um yeah, that happened in 2019. I want to say it was 2000. It may have been 2020, because I'm thinking now. It's in my phone. I just have to go back and look at it. I remember my husband deploying deploying in 2020. And during that time, like, guys, when I tell you, you have to be careful of what you get involved in. You have to. It may feel good, it may feel like it's right, but Satan wants your soul. He wants your soul. That is the purpose. That is why he goes through all that he goes through to deceive us. We talk about all of these groups and dark, powerful groups and entities when it comes to um, celebrities and all of these different things. Like, you have to, we talk about the Illuminati and all of these things, these celebrities being witches. This stuff is real. Spiritual world is real. My husband got deployed. At that point, I'm at nighttime. I'm by myself, sleeping in the bed. For a long time while he was gone, I was spiritually attacked in my sleep. I mean, sleep paralysis, waking up, not being able to breathe, not being able to move, feeling like something is on me, waking up to whispers in my ear, and like no one there, but something whispered in my ear, and I don't even know what it was saying, but whispered in my ear and woke me up in fear, being tugged on, like my feet being tugged on while I'm sleeping, being afraid to fall asleep because I would be falling asleep, and the moment where you're like comfortably falling asleep and then someone wakes you up and you're just like, man, like I was just about to get into some really good sleep. I would reach that point, and I would be scared to continue to fall asleep because I would feel like my body, I would just feel like if I fell into a deep sleep, something is going to take my soul. God, y'all, Satan is fighting for ours. Like, he wants our souls. And God just wants to keep us. He wants to protect us. He wants us to be with him. So I just can't stress enough how real the spiritual world is. This is why witches exist. This is why people do all of these rituals. Satan is clever and he has power. This is his world that we're living in. He has power. I was seriously attacked over and over in my sleep. And this is because I was coming out of it. I was giving it all up. I threw away everything. Everything. I have found stuff here and there, like, oh, I forgot I had this. The other day I found my waist beads that I had. I threw them away. I believe I threw them away. I'm gonna have to go double check, but I think I threw them away. I found them while I was getting ready for work in the morning. So I don't know if I immediately threw them away in that moment because usually I'm running late for work. But came across them. Everything I come across, I get rid of. Like, I'm not playing. God is not playing. And for me, it's like God protected me. I could have died while I was in that and went straight to hell. I seriously could have died while I'm sitting here playing with God, going against everything that I know, going against everything that his Bible tells us not to do. I could have died. I got into a car accident during that time too, actually. But one where this is before I got into new age stuff, but I wasn't focused on God. I thought I was going to die. It took me a minute to even feel comfortable driving again. I still drove because I had to. Anything could have happened. Anything. I can't stress enough how real this is, y'all. I can't. Every time that I was spiritually attacked and having nightmares at that, every time I would wake up and I would call on the name of Jesus, immediately stop. There were times where I was going through sleep paralysis and I was fighting, literally fighting to be able to even say Jesus' name. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. I couldn't do anything. I had to fight to get out the name Jesus. And the moment that I'm able to say it, it stops. I don't play with God. I am not perfect. I'm still a sinner. I still have fleshly things that cause me to sin, or that put me in a position to where I have to make a decision to where, am I going to do what I know is right, or am I going to do what I know is wrong? The closer that I get to God, when I say I don't play, it's I fear God. Like, I have a strong fear for God, and it's not like oh, God is just so scary. God is powerful. God is powerful. But it is like a reverence for God. It's a respect for God. It's like how you fear your parents, but you're not scared to be around them, but it's like a healthy fear. Like, you're not gonna play with them. You're not gonna say certain things around them. You're not gonna just walk up to your parent and smack them, or you can be upset with them. They can say something to upset you, and you're still gonna be respectful. It is like that times 10, times 1,000. Y'all, if y'all are into this stuff, please, I am begging you to get out of it. It is not right. I know it might feel good. I had so much work to do. I thought these crystals were giving me, were making me more loving and lovable and all of these different things. I came out of New Age having so much work to do, but having to trust in God to change me. Having to trust God to change me. And that takes time. You have to allow God in. God changes you from the inside. Read his word, spend time with him. That's how you change. That's how you become more loving and lovable. It's the God in you. Satan can't mimic that. I'm sorry. There's that lady in that crystal shop. She probably, to other people, she probably felt like she was a loving person and very spiritual and all of these different things and got it together. No, that's artificial. You want that authentic love, and only God can give you that. So, this is my story, and I really hope and pray that it helps someone who watches this. Like, we're going into 2005, and this is how long it took me to tell this story. I've watched so many videos on this. When I was getting out of it, I watched so many videos. So many people were making videos on this, and like just crying. And that was me during that time. Had I made the video during that time, oh, I would have been all to pieces. God's love is real. God is real. God is real. Satan is real. Stop playing. Stop playing. You never know when you're going to take your last breath. I have to think about my kids, like what influence do I want to have on them? Had I stayed in that mess, God, like, my children love the Lord. My daughter was just talking about God today. The internet was messing up. And she's like, well, maybe God doesn't want us to watch TV right now. Yeah, my oldest daughter studies the Bible. My oldest daughter has Bible studies with her friends. Sorry. She has Bible studies with her friends. She's 15. At 15, I was having sex already. I was doing what I wanted to do. But because God will God will reach down so low to save his children. He can get you from anywhere. I don't care how deep of a hole you feel like you're in. I don't care how far away you feel like you are from God. When God loves you, He will move mountains for you. You are just one person, one soul. That is how much God loves us. Do not take it for granted. Don't take the time that you have here for granted. Don't take His love for granted either. He forgives and He gives us grace, but there comes a point, I believe, where God is just like, time is up. I have an amazing husband who prays for me. He's God fearing. He has Bible study with his friends, with one of his friends. He's always trying to tell people about God. He makes me look at myself and consider what am I doing, or what can I do better. I have Bible study with my friends too. Um but because of our love for the Lord, our children love the Lord. And my prayer is that their children will love the Lord, and so on and so forth, and that they won't turn away. I have a daughter my teenage daughter, she's not where I was when I was 15. She's not where my husband was when he was 15. So when we talk about breaking generational curses and cycles, God is the way. God is the way. He is the only way. So my prayer is that if you're watching this and you are into this stuff, or you come out of it, don't take it for granted. Surrender your life to God. It's hard sometimes. I agree with everything that the Bible says, but it does not mean that I like everything that the Bible says. Just like we have rules, and my flesh wants to go against those rules sometimes. So it's not meant to be fun, but it's good for you.